What's up, Phil?
Not too much. I'm just super nervous, but it's okay. We're gonna
Oh man, don't be nervous.
be great. All right. How are you? That's the
Dude.
real question.
Oh man, I'm great, man. I just finished up grad school and in West Virginia. I moved back down here to Mississippi. I'm in my hometown at my parents' house. I'm moving next weekend to a new town, getting started on my next job next month. Director of bands at a community college at Mississippi Delta, and super excited for that. But dude, this is all about you, man. I'm super excited. Thanks for coming in, man. It's been way too long, and excited to talk shop with you and reminisce on old times. It's gonna be good.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Um, you know, me and Phil first met at 7th Regiment, long time ago, about 7 years ago, and so I started off. I got a little bit late in the game, in the drum corps game. I was 20 years old. I was one of the bonus babies, so I got an extra year 'cause my birthday's in August. And since I'm in North Mississippi, the closest corps was Music City in Nashville, and so I went up there. Didn't really go well. Sent a video up to 7th Regiment all the way up in Connecticut. Thought I'd give it a shot. Um, Thankfully, they were happy enough to thought I was okay enough to say come on up in January, and I went up there, and we drove. My dad drove me all the way up there, 23 hours straight, to Connecticut, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but it was a lot of fun. And then I got on the snare line and stood next to this guy. I think you had just turned 16 or something
Yeah.
like that. It was crazy, and I'm on this line, which by the way we're gonna have to like talk about all the ridiculousness of what
That was
all
a
everybody on that line has done. It's crazy,
yeah, that was a
and
really tough rookie
it,
center
it,
line.
it was crazy. It was nuts what everybody else is going off to do, and I got stood next to this kid named Phil Andrews, and he's ripping it, and he's like barely turned 16, and I'm like, dude, what the heck? I'm like 20 years old. I don't know what I'm doing, and it was nuts, and then it just took off from there, and I'm super excited for you, man. Like you have done awesome things, and it just took off and it's done great, and so let's start with this because many people may not know. A lot of people probably know about your drum corps stuff. You've done a lot of stuff with Carlos and the Left Hand Path thing. You've done a lot of cool things. I think it's where a lot of people have seen you on. But like as far as your roots, I think that's what's really interesting to me because I didn't have those roots starting off like you did. I started off, kind of your beginner band kid, 6th grade, band type stuff, and that's kind of how I got started. And but for you, you started way different than I did, and which is really really cool. So why don't you like give us some insight on how you got started and how things progressed over time, and give us a little bit of insight of how that has affected what you've been able to do for the last several years.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I grew up about as far away from marching band as you can get it, but also like right next door to it. Because my parents and pretty much everybody on either side of my family was really heavily ingrained in like the marching and maneuvering, fife and drum corps that you see in parades. So I grew up in the center of that. So let's go back to it. So my dad and all his brothers and sisters all played fife in a Connecticut drum corps called Carey's Cadets way back in like the 60s, a little bit of the 70s for the younger of his
That's
siblings.
that's cool.
And
I didn't know your parents did that.
so that's where I get the lineage from. You said something and I did not hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. It's I didn't know your family had been all in that. That I thought that's
Oh,
cool.
it runs super deep. Like I think it started with my grandparents on my mom's side. What I remember loosely is that the story of my parents is that they met through the drum corps that I was around called St. Peter's.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, they met through there, which happened to a bunch of other people in drum corps. And eventually I come around and Simon comes around. So that's like where the lineage comes from. Then everybody on my dad's side is like ridiculously talented fifers, and they were all really hard workers. And my dad taught like a little junior fife and drum combination corps for a while. But that's all irrelevant. That's not about me at all. My story really starts in like the Christmas picture mode, because the week before, okay, so for some context, around December, I think December of 2000, I want to say. I don't remember which year for sure. It was like 99, 2001. I want to say 2000. We'll just meet in the middle. And my parents take me and like my little baby brother, who I think is around, but I'm not sure. They take us to get our Christmas pictures taken professionally, and they put us in like these really itchy wool sweaters with like some fishes on them.
Oh, yeah.
Like, probably really super uncomfortable, especially for me, because I'm not photogenic at all. Everybody around knows that like I hate smiling for pictures because I'm terrible. So I was just putting up a giant hissy fit in a studio, and the weekend before that, there was a giant Christmas parade in like an old Saybrook in my hometown of my home state of Connecticut, and I went there, and I was around all the drummers for God knows how long, too long, playing Jingle Bells and being around it for God knows how long. Too long, maybe, I don't know. But it was enough that it left an impression on me. So naturally, like, I didn't want to be around any of that. So thinks, oh, wait, he probably wants to drum. He was doing a little bit of drumming at the parade. So she goes back to our home, which is like conveniently 5 minutes away, grabs like a little tin drum and like some really tiny drumsticks, brings them back, puts them in front of me, and immediately my face just lights up. So obviously beat the crap out of the thing because like I'm a 2-year-old Neanderthal drum, but like I'm just happy, and yeah, it all really starts. Then from there, I just got into the fife and drum corps thing, and we can delve into that a little bit deeper too. But that's where it all starts. And then eventually, like, one of our common teachers, Brendan Mason, got me into the 7th pool. Mm-hmm. And then from there, Dan Shack, he brings me through. That's Winter Percussion, George Mason. He goes off on his own for a little bit. I march Crown under Travis Peterman, and then he gets the gig a year later. Then I go out to X, and that's my marching history, I guess.
Yeah, man, it's crazy to think how, you know, you being from Connecticut and me being all the way down in Mississippi, you know, how small the drum world actually gets whenever you really want to try and go after to do things, because it's insane to think how someone so, you know, people that are so, you know, physically apart can come and be a part of something, and then, you know, and ever since it's been there ever since. You know, when you drum with people, it's so cool how you instantly become friends. It's instantly another person in your family almost, and it's really, really cool to see how, you know, you got to grow up around that. And I think that's so, you know, I think that's so unique, because not everybody, you know, experiences that. I didn't even know what fife and drum was until, you know, I go up to New England for a summer, and it's you and Pat McHale and Chris Mead and all these guys are up there, and you guys are hacking away at stuff and telling me some things, and then, you know, and then the Masons are there, and then, you know, they're telling their thing, and I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? What is all this? And that was my first glimpse into, yeah, it's nuts. And so, you know, you started early into fife and drum, and what was the first group that you joined? Because I know there's some junior fife and drum groups that I'm sure that's probably where you started. So
Yeah.
where did you start in a fife and drum, and then where did you transition after that?
Okay. So the first fife and drum corps I marched for myself was a group called Warehouse Point Juniors. They went out of existence a couple years after I joined in, but that's where I all started. I had a really probably one of the most intelligent instructors in the history of the activity, and Dr. Jim Clark, because he
Oh
ran the
wow.
drum line there. And he, like, his brain and my brain thought very similarly a lot, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And, like, he was able to somehow, like, nurture the craziness in me so that I could actually, like, improve. He was my private instructor too, so he had brought me along for the ride a little bit, and he got me started. When that folds, when that they folded, I stayed in touch with him for a little bit, starting to get in contact with him a little bit more now. Then I went to Colonel John Chester, which is where Brendan Mason was teaching at the time, with his brother Colin, and I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was it. But yeah, that's where I met Brendan and really started to, like, develop a relationship with him. Then a couple, what's the best way to put this? My parents were taking me on to, like, cruises with St. Peter's at the time. And, like, my uncle is the director, has been for, like, the past 10 or so years, probably more at this point. I don't remember. But I was around them enough that I started to pick up the tunes by ear, and I was able to eventually, like, join the group. So there's, like, videos of, like, me playing that stuff at, like, 13, like, on cruise ship, Alaska and stuff. That's
Wow.
all fun tidbits. Yeah, so those are where I really get, like, my influences from. This guy coming into the table, like, we knew that Brendan was, like, doing some instructor shit. I knew about 7th Regiment a little bit because I was also in the Colonel John drumline at the time was Kevin Thompson, who writes for Newtown High School. He did 7th for a second. He's doing some Spartan stuff. Now he's with the Old Guard. So
Yeah.
it was cool being around him for a little bit because, like, his hands are magic. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point again. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
we knew about that. I got involved too.
Awesome. Did a lot of people, there's some people in fife and drum, I'm not sure if they start off reading or if they just start off playing and then reading kind of comes later. That whole process is kind of interesting, and I've never really sat down to talk about that with some people who started so young or at the beginning of that, because I came into it, what little fife and drum I've done, um, you know, well into after I've been playing for several years, and then I had to figure out how to do the fife and drum thing, change that approach. And but the reading, there's different ways to read it, but the reading kind of came as I was learning how to play. So I know that's different. That's like different schools of thought or whatnot. Is that something that started off when you guys started playing in like the junior corps, or is that something that comes later? Like, okay, now you know how to play it, know how it sounds. This is what it looks like, kind of thing, or is that kind of goes with it? I don't know.
Well, for me, I mean, every student is different, obviously. Like, you are aware as an educator, I'm aware as an educator. Like, every student learns differently. Ideally, we want them to read first. I was the absolute opposite of that. Like, I still can't read. So sometimes there are things I can hear in my head, and I know exactly what I need them to be, and I write them down so that they're just there for posterity. But a lot of the things that I learned growing up were by ear, and eventually by sight as I started to develop that a little bit more than the ear. So you could learn either way. Obviously, they nurtured the whole music learning thing, and they really tried to put that on you. Eventually, I got better at that least on one or two lines. But yeah, I mean, it really goes either way
I
because I've
gotcha.
seen people that are just like, okay, and they got it. But like if you showed them, okay, this is what that looks like, huh? And they don't know what they just played because they only know how it sounds.
Right.
So it's a little bit backwards for some people, but also because of that, the community is a little bit more lenient with that because it's really easy to, it's like the whole pop music thing because that's easy to pick up on, like bum 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 bum, like an Usher song. Everybody knows
Right.
that. Everybody knows the melody. Everybody knows what the words are. So we're cognizant of that style of learning a little bit more, and we're a little bit more accepting to teach that way, as opposed to
Right.
saying, okay, here's what it looks like on music, and then it's like hieroglyphics.
Right.
So it really depends, but I see more rote learners there.
I gotcha. Well, what's funny is, because a lot of the fife and drum tradition, the American fife and drum tradition, is actually considered America's world music. Whenever you go under the category of world music, so you look at the traditions of this place, the traditions of these people, the traditions of these people, and if you look under what America's uh, world music, like folk tradition, fife and drum is in that. And so I think that's really cool because, like you said, you hear the tune, it's the melodies, it's the fifes, it's the song, and then the rhythms that come with it is what makes the whole thing. And so whenever you hear it, you can, you easily hear, Pfeiffer's Retreat or something, or you hear this tune, or you hear this tune, and it's like, oh, I know what that is, and then that's just what you played. So I think that's kind of why that's a lot more open there. I think that's cool. But shifting gears a little
Right.
bit to drum corps, we can start with our days at Seventh and the grind that began, uh, which was
Those
a complete
days, man.
a completely like whole new concept of things that blew my mind when I had Mason and Shaq and old Jeff in front of us. Man, they were brutal, and but they had a lot of really. I mean, it was just content, like information, information. It was like drinking out of a fire hydrant, and it was awesome. And but we could start there. So for those of you who don't know, me and Phil started in drum corps the same year in 2013, and granted, he was much much younger and much better than I was, and I'm this old cat trying to hang on. I was the oldest dude in the whole section. Like the guy who was even center that year I was older than him, which is kind of funny. And and so you had Phil, you had me, you had London Roland, who, man, I ran into London a couple years ago when he was marching Matrix. We stayed at the same housing site because at the time I was teaching a high school winds group, and we were staying. We went up to championships, and there's other groups there. This big campground thing, and they're like, "Oh, Matrix is over here," and I'm looking around. I'm like, "Wait a minute, I think London's marching Matrix. I haven't seen London in like 4 years," and so I like run over there, and he's there, and that was really cool. And so London marched Matrix, I think 4 years, maybe more.
I think it
I
was
don't know.
like
London was a young cat too.
half. I know. I think he dropped and is age out for some reason. I don't really know why. I don't like. I work with Rob Ferguson who runs Matrix, so I could ask him, but like I don't think that
I
anyone
haven't
wants
seen,
to.
I haven't really talked to London. I see London's mom on Facebook more than I see London. But so
Bambi.
you got London, yeah, maybe. So we had London and another really young cat. We got and then Pat McHale, the beast that lives. You haven't seen him now. His beard's like, I'm gonna get there, but the beard's insane.
Like the grunt
You know,
polos. It's really funny. Like I called him out on it. I hate how right you are. I was like, I know. It's really funny.
it's really funny.
Yeah, he and I kind of, it's good. We did
Yeah.
it for a while.
After that year, Pat went on to March Cadets and was there for three years, and then which he
3
had marched.
years.
Yeah, he had marched seventh the year before, so he did 2 years of seventh and then 3 years at cadets, and ended up being center at cadets in 16, which was a ridiculous year. And then then the situation with Eric, and then going on to Christian. We had Christian Chapman. That dude, which
Yeah, Chris.
You knew Christian before we all did, didn't you? Or
I
you and Pat, or Pat did. I know Pat did. I think him and Pat didn't do.
Pat had done Macy's before.
That's right.
So that's how Pat Christian into it. And then, yeah, that's how he got him here, which was cool. What else? I don't
Because
remember who else was there.
Chris marched with us in 13. He took 14 off, and then 15 he came back, and then his age out in 16 he was at Oregon Crusaders. Rest in peace. But that 2016 OC group was good.
They were really good. I enjoyed watching the videos of them that I saw and just running into them on tour and whatnot. It was great.
Yeah,
Like
they're the tree pants.
Dude, Kevin Saxon.
Yeah,
All right.
Kevin was there.
I
Yeah,
love Kevin.
Kevin was kind of the quiet guy who you didn't have to worry about, man. He's throwing down. And it's like, all right, man, dang, like, and there's so many like we had Max and old Max from Canada.
I love Max, man. I don't talk to him nearly as much as I should. Like, literally, like I marched Crown with his sister, and Giselle was on tour as our uniform manager. She still is doing that stuff at Crown.
She's
Still
awesome. She's awesome.
I love that whole family. They're great.
Yeah, they're awesome people. They would drive down from Canada and come and we just had a great. It was just a lovely group of people. And Tom on the snow line, I haven't seen or heard from him in years. I don't know what he's doing or if you know what's up with him.
I think he went off on his own. I know he was going to the University of Delaware. I don't really know what became of him after that, though. Like I think he's really like the one, maybe one or two. No, really just the one that hasn't stuck with it. That's unfortunate. I think he was like burnt out from all his years of wherever he marched anyway. So
Yeah, so that was our
it
yeah, that was our starting group, and then we had several others throughout the whole line that went off to march all over the place and do some really really awesome stuff. And so, to everybody who's watching or thinking, like how do people end up knowing people, or how do they end up going to different places and doing different things? And it's just going out and meeting the folks and just drumming. And another thing that's really cool, how I ended up in West Virginia, was through another connection. But when I get there, I end up learning from another teacher who introduces me to another teacher who brings us all in, and we're learning other things. And through all of that, I know Mark Riley now, and I know guys in the old guard, which is crazy to think. The second year, Gabe came in and marched with us in 2014, and now he's one of the members of the old guard, which is awesome. And
He's great.
so it's really, really cool. And you can use these opportunities to like, to really connect with people, and you all kind of work and build together the whole thing that we love of drumming, which is really, really cool. So, so particularly to you, with your tenure over drum corps, what were some things that were challenging when you were at seventh in the open class level that were also challenges at Crown, being at a much higher level and, and competing up there for medals? Was there some of the same, was it the same kind of grind? Was it the same kind of philosophy kind of going in, or was there different challenges, or what seemed to be the same or different going from, open class to world class, and things that you had to grasp or thought of, or did, oh, we were doing this at seventh, so I already kind of know, or maybe it's like, oh, this is new, I need to keep working on this kind of thing. What were a couple of things that did that?
I'd say I feel like it's something that I learned through the fife and drum thing, just like listening to the person that you play next to. That was something that helped me a lot early on, especially like as the facilities decided to show up a little bit more. That always went with me, the ability to just like be a listener and to be sensitive, but also to just like stay reliable and do my job every day. I thought that came from just the fife and drum aspect first, which I think open class taught me urgency, and that really helped me on the road every day when I had to be super, super consistent for Crown. I mean, you're on the field for 90 days. Like, it's hard. So I think getting our butts whooped to a pulp like once a week at seventh really made it easy to like get past the initial beatdown and to just go about the business. And then obviously like that little mini tour that you get, that helps a little bit too. But I would say it's mostly just the urgency, because that just helped me so much. Like, I felt the drive to be great right away because I thought that there was way less time than there actually was. And that helped me get ahead
Right.
of other people in life. It was good. I don't know if that answers like your question completely. It kind of does in my eyes, but like for me, it was just like things I learned early on just stayed with me and just helped me grow faster. That open class learning curve is something that you can't recreate. If you want to be good there, you have to do it from the get-go, or you're already behind the eight ball.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The demand was the highest demand I had ever experienced, and going in, all of us traveling from all over, coming in for the weekend, and right away it's Friday night, you're tired already, you haven't even started playing yet, and and then you got all right, here's this chunk, go, and it's like, you got to be mentally. It was the hardest mental thing that I've ever had to do, and I think, like you said, building that mentality of just being in it, and it's just the longer you can be in it. For those of you who are interested in doing drum corps, or it's really just a mental game. There's a lot of physicality that comes with it. Like getting in shape and things because you're outside and getting used to the heat, or being able to, do things for long periods of time. Like endurance is a big part of the game, but really a lot of it is mental. It's mental endurance and just being mentally in it.
Absolutely. I want to tell you that every first lesson I have, or at least for a certain period of time, I don't know, there was a very long time where I just talked about mentality first. Like, I gave a clinic on just like auditioning mentality to help you just grow faster. Because if you think that you are incapable of something, you are. Until you tell yourself that you're not.
Yep.
So the thing is, like, a lot of people defeat themselves before.
Yep.
So a completely different thing. But I always start my lessons with just making sure that the mind is centered on what you're doing, with just a little bit of foresight to it. Because if your mind is not thinking about what the rest of your body needs to do, it can't do it. So that mentality, first thing, is absolutely true. And it bites people in the butt at the very end on tour sometimes. So it's super important to just get that straightened out right away, because you're going to be tired. You're going to be sweaty. You're going to hate the dude next to you for like 45 minutes. It doesn't matter. You still got to play game, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's all about mental toughness, and anything that you can really do to develop that is best.
Absolutely. You know, and I think another thing too, kind of jumping in musically, I'd never been online until I got to core that was so detail oriented about your playing as far as like musicality than I had ever done until I got like Dan. Oh my God, Dan Shack would break down every single stroke, like, and you know, you remember we sit there with our pencils and was like, this is, you know, like where we're hitting the drum on this, how is it supposed to be, like every single dot on the page. And I at first it was super overwhelming for me because, you know, I was just thinking loud, soft, you know, big deal. And, you know, and it's like, no, every stroke has a purpose. Every note has a purpose, you know, and it was super musical. If you go back and look at those videos I mean, like, it's open class, but dude, like, there was so much detail and so much little things going on. If you soak it, like, if you look into it, it's like, man, there was a lot happening. Even though the beats weren't like extremely difficult, you know, like, you know, what Crown's doing or Cadets or anybody like that. You know, there were a few chunks that was pretty choppy, but you know, but
Absolutely.
it was all about musicality. And that's what made it hard. That's what made it really hard. It's like anybody can play beats, you know, anybody can throw out the rhythms, but it's like how musical can you do it? And, you know, we were talking about what's the horn line doing here? Where are we out on the field? How's our body moving? Like it was just so much that went into that is what blew my mind and just totally changed everything. Is musically, is that still how Crown approached whenever you transitioned there? As far as because I know like as far as the rhythms got harder and the body movement's harder and things like that. But in reality, it's kind of the same. It's under the same umbrella, you know. But what were some musical things that were the same or different?
Well, for me, in my experience, that evolved as the staff changed. Like, with Angst under the helm, it was very much about just like the height and the feel and what was right for the moment, and making sure that the mechanics were setting you up for success. Like, I remember Travis Peterman was my snare tech in 2016, and he literally told me to stop using my wrist because I used it too much. And then once I did, felt like I was using this only.
Right.
Like, the mechanics were a big talking point, especially, and I would say more so when the staff switched over, where instead of, okay, arm, wrist, finger, that's cool, use them all the time, and me thinking that's super ambiguous because I've never heard use your arm before. But
Oh, really?
when
Wow.
news switched over with Frankie Cummings, Shaq coming back, I felt as if I was able to go into the detail-oriented style of the technique that I play with now, at least
Right.
in some things of it. So I would say that, like, in 17, it was really about just, like, making sure from a technicality and a mechanical standpoint, everything was correct, because if you would do that all the same way, then everybody would play the notes the same way, and if everybody's thinking about the details the same way that Dan had mentioned to us and had really just like nurtured us in, it would lead to clarity, and it worked. It was great. And then we stepped it up a year later because we stopped using heights so much. Like, we added another level and we started to use the dynamics only. Sometimes we would translate them to numbers, but in 2018 we were very dynamic central. And I don't think a lot of people talk about that because it's like because you think of East Coast drum lines and you think, oh, heights. That's not the way Crown was. Not when I left it, and it's definitely not going to go back anytime soon. Like, it's just all about the dynamics and making sure that you're dialed in and the blend and the balance is there within your section, and you're listening back to fit that sound into another section of sound if it's behind you. Just about your sonic environment and how to fit into it like a glove while still doing your part. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Whenever you change from just the technical, I need to turn here, I need to the height here, lift here, to just play musical, like just play the part like how it should sound. And then as you go more sound focused, then the mechanics kind of follow it naturally. It's less to think about as far as like turn or place here. It's like just think about it musically, and it should naturally, like, if your fundamentals are already there, which if you've made it to Crown, your fundamentals are there, like, and it's like just make your fundamentals follow the musical idea that we're all trying to get. And I think having that with Dan just changed my whole. That just blew my mind. A lot of thinking about how musical can we make a snare drum? There's only so many sounds you can get out of a snare drum, but it's like, you can make it musical, and it blew my mind.
Yeah. As far as like the modern day goes, he is my influence as to what I kind of talk about. Because I mean, simply put, like, our brains worked pretty similarly. He saw a lot of, I might be paraphrasing, but I feel like we saw a lot of each other in each other. So I'm not going to say that he said that because that's probably wrong. But
No,
I
I
just
get
tried
that.
to, he was somebody when he was in his heyday at the Cavaliers. Like, I wanted my hands to look like his hands. So, I mean, he's not stupid. Like, he's the smartest man in the room, and everybody knows it. So if he's going to sit down and talk about methodology, of course I'm going to listen, because, like, I spent all my snow days trying to learn Cabby's 2011 by ear because my reading sense. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he is my influence as far as the technique is concerned, because every small level of detail that he went after, it's what I wanted to, because I wanted to play every note better than everybody else ever could. That was my drive when I was starting out, and having him as the mentor, he sparked me in a bunch of ways that I needed. He knew how to push my buttons, and he used that to his advantage to make me better. And I didn't really realize that until a couple months ago. Because before I was just like, I hate you. I hate you. Stop pushing my
Oh
buttons.
man.
But
Oh,
then it got
there was no holding back, man.
Monster, he and that was around me turned me into. So
That's really cool.
yeah, I got super lucky. Love that guy. I don't talk to him enough.
I haven't actually. Yeah, I haven't really talked to him in a while. I see the Masons from time to time, and we'll see at PASIC or something like that. But I think it's really cool how you see the spilling over of philosophies in different people and how it kind of goes. Because as you go on, you learn from this person, you learn from this person, you learn from it kind of all shapes kind of who you are. And that's what's kind of cool about every person who keeps studying. Go study with other people. Go, learn from them, figure out what their methods is, and because all that's going to shape you into now you're your own formula. which is going to be unique. Like your formula is unique to you because there's, from where your upbringing and what all you've done, and then same goes for me. Mine's totally different, but our paths have crossed in a certain way, but then still has some similar things. But I think that's what's cool about collaborating. You can really learn from each other. As long as you're trying to learn, I think that's kind of the main thing. Keep an open mind and try to keep learning.
Absolutely. I know for a fact Dan said this. I am on staff, but I am still a student, and I will always be learning. I know for a fact he said that, and that really resonated with me because I knew he was trying. Like, and if he was trying, then I'll never stop trying. I kind of lost sight of that for a little bit when I was in a heyday, but it's whatever now. But you always learn. Like, I have so much to learn as an educator. Like, I'm so babyish in terms of what I know. Like, and I mean, it's exactly what you're saying is exactly spot on. Like, you keep an open mind with the people around you, and eventually you're going to find those full connections that are going to take you even further. Because there's parts of everybody that you are going to pull from all the time. For me, I pull from Dan a lot. I pull from everybody I'm around a lot. So call me malleable and call me like whatever you want, but like I'm just learning from the people that know more than I do until I know more than the people looking up to me do. And then I pass that on. That's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Because I did most of my time as a performer. I have to give back now that I don't have that in mind, and I have to share my ideas with what comes next. That's where my whole for the future thing came from. Really. I mean, that's why I put that hashtag everywhere.
Oh, cool.
It's a big old tangent. How do we
Cool. So for everybody who's still in here watching, if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put your questions in, and we'll address this. With Phil, we'll ask him whatever's on your mind, because I can sit here and think about stuff all day, but this is really for you guys and as well. This is starting off just kind of giving us a little background and kind of some insight on between me and Phil. But if there's any questions specifically for Phil or drumming or music or technique or teaching or anything like that, feel free to type those in there, and we'll get them going. Like you were saying for the future thing, so long for you, you've done a lot more playing than teaching, and I think for me, I've done almost more teaching than playing at this point, which is kind of interesting, and because my performance side has grown a lot, and I still try to continue to do that, but I really have just always been into teaching, and so I started wrestling with how do I teach a certain way, or what does my teaching look like, and when I first started off, I almost I wanted to be Dan, I wanted to be Brendan, I wanted to be Jeff, like I wanted to be Blankafleur, like I wanted to be like everybody and do it, and then I really struggled with that. It was really, really hard because I'm like almost the opposite of Dan as far as kind of talking and chit chatting and like everything like that, which is kind of funny. But like his ideas though were the ones that I wanted to be. But I like shifted into wanting to try to be like Dan, and I had to I had to change that. I was like, no, just be me, like just be you, and just share those ideas. If it's for a moment you need to be Dan, but you're really you. Like just be you, and then use those ideas and figure that out. So that, as a teacher, I still work on who do I want to be and those types of things. So we got our first question.
what do we got?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say I'm glad I'm watching. It helps my mindset to know that I'm not the only one who's clueless. Oh man, yeah, we're trust me, like it
That
is.
bad. Oh, that's one of my. Oh my goodness, I know that person.
That's
I
awesome.
teach her. I teach her privately. She's got a good brain.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. You know, that's another thing too, because uh, even when I went to grad school, I just finished grad school. You know, here's like the little pie chart where it's like how much you know, how much you think you know, and how much you don't know, and then how much you don't know that you don't know. Like, it's like you'll never be able to figure out how much you don't know. So that's really cool. We got a question. How would you go about matching both hands and sound quality? What if you are having a hard time rebounding the left hand traditional the same as the right? Oh, that's a good question. So
That's a good question.
trying to match sound quality even though you're having traditional. You want to attack that?
I, yeah, I guess I'll field it. So it starts with the anatomy. 13 muscles are working in harmony in your right side, while 4 are working together on your left. So you need to create more rotational force, or as the engineers call it, torque, in the left side of your body, which means for you, you have to work a little harder. And then the velocity is going to come as a product of you turning your wrist so fast, specifically the bones around each other. That will help you match that right hand. It's going to be a little bit of a workout at first, but once you get used to it, it never goes away.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think pathway is really important too, as far as how is your wrist looking before you play. Like because when I first showed up at seventh, Dan got on me all the time about what is your left hand doing, man? Like what is this? And I had to like pull it back, you know, I had to, you know, I was almost too flat. And he's like, pull it back and you're going to be able to turn more and be able to get more sound. Like, you know, figure out that proper pathway, and then you're going to have to work harder because it is doing something different. And then I think a lot of double stops, that's where double stop exercises come, you know, figuring out how that feels and looks. But so I hope that
A lot of left
answers
hand
that
lead
question.
stuff now. I just did left hand lead exclusively because your right hand will always be the most natural or the more natural of the two sides. So that's the perfect gauge. Why are we exhausting that first? So, I mean, obviously it forces you to think about that left hand a little bit more because you're taught to listen to the first sound you hear and match it with the other. So I'm just trying to counteract that a little bit. If this is study and this is full and resonant, then you have to make that adjustment right away. So I like double stops. I like left hand lead. I love alternating sticking too. I think that's so good. I love all stimulants. I love
You know,
stimulants.
kind of going on this in a concert sense, you know, like there's a whole thing of like teaching, you know, like that right hand lead kind of thing, and even in a concert setting. And then whenever I got to grad school and I started taking lessons with George Willis, and he was like, I would get done playing a snare etude out of Mitchell Peters or something, and he's like, okay, why did you choose that sticking? And I'm like, well, for consistency of sound, I just wanted to keep it right hand. And he's like, okay, can you alternate everything? And I was like, sure, I could try. He's like, did you practice that? I was like, I hadn't thought about it, but okay, let's go. And you know, alternating every single stroke, and I got a different sound. And then he was like, oh, that's interesting. So how can alternating make it sound different, or how could alternating make it a better approach or a different approach, or maybe it's worse? I don't know. And so we sat down and talked about, you know, his version, his whole idea is like alternate every both hands should sound exactly the same no matter where you start, you know. and he was all about alternating, and that kind of changed my whole like concert snare drumming ideas of kind of like you said. Now you start with the left, why not, or something like that. But that really changed my whole view.
Right. Well, the whole thing is that no matter what you do, like it's whatever the music needs.
Exactly.
It's exactly what we're saying. All right.
Right. Do you guys teach check patterns? I do.
I teach the rhythm pyramid, which is similar. It's the check patterns, but arranged in a different order. It's what Tim Fairbanks uses at Centerville. And I found it very, very useful because it's taught me what each pattern literally is. And he will go through all of them. Like he has a 5-lit accent tap pattern and a timing pattern and a roll pattern all written out. And I'm trying to like beat into the 7-lit pattern because I want to learn all of those patterns. There's 128 of them. And it forces you to learn them in a methodical manner that makes sense. Where it's like asking the math problem, okay, you have 4 friends. How many different ways can they shake hands? Or you have 7 friends. 7 friends. How many different ways can they shake hands? So that's my take on that. I do teach like the rhythm patterns. I just teach them in a different format than everybody on the East Coast does. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I don't know. That's for you to decide.
No, it's really cool. I think that could be something we could chat about. Because I'm kind of curious about that. We got another. I'm glad I can't see it. I'm glad this discussion is happening, and to be here to see it. I have a question for Phil. What's 5 things you look for when kids come to audition for you at Cap and Phantom? Do you look for the same things? Ooh, 5 things. That's good.
Okay. Well, one I will see first, no matter what, is your confidence. Like, I will know the rest based on the way you carry yourself and how confident you look behind what you're doing. And experience kind of plays a small part in that. But also, like we talked about with mentality earlier, Ryan, like something I already talk about with every student of mine is that every time you go behind the drum, you have to act the part that you're willing to play. Like for me, seeing groups like Coates and Cabbies and Crown '09 and whatnot, they all were bosses behind the drum. And that made me want to be one. So that's kind of the first thing is like, how well do you carry yourself? Second, are you aware of the way your body works? Are you aware of what you feel like when you play? Are you aware of your rhythmic integrity? Are you aware of how your feet are in relation to the Met? Are you aware of the people around you? Like, how attentive are you? That all plays pretty equally, but it all starts with presence. And that's where I think people make their bread and butter, or they can choose to leave it at the convenience store. So, I mean, that's really 2 things, but like also like that's everything. Is like, how confident are you in what you've done? How well do you prepare yourself? If I had to pick 3 more things, it's like, I mean, like I said, do you know how your body works? Do you know your vocabulary? How good at learning on the fly are you? Because we do that a lot, especially when it comes to staging. It's about how fast we can rely on you to say, okay, and do the right thing every time. And that starts by playing 80 in just the first 4 counts.
Absolutely.
That's my 2 cents.
That when I was on staff at Southwind, that was similar idea. You know, I look for the people who come in that were prepared, that you got to come in and nail it. You know, you can't question it. But I also didn't, you know, from the beginning of the camp, you got a whole weekend of how this works. I don't, you know, Friday night doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't. you know, if you were kind of timid or getting into it, that doesn't necessarily mean you're knocked off the list either. You know, it's also about growth over time for me, you know, is, you know, well, how much of this information did you really grab onto and change and really progress over the weekend? Because that's also a part of the game too, is progress, you know, and you know, how much of this did you take in and work on and was able to adapt to? But yeah, I think awareness is huge, preparedness is huge, your confidence and just, you know, being able to know that you can do what you can do. And I think a lot of that has to come from, like, you got to be really good at self motivation. You got to be really good at self confidence, and that was something I struggled with and still kind of do. But at the time, you know, like no, you're obviously good enough to be given a, you know, giving yourself a shot. You know, you think you're good enough to be giving yourself a shot here. You know, go after it. Just go after it. You know, just go after it. Is all I've said. But
That's something I don't think about too much. I mean, I never really did, because if you just show up and you are able to say, okay, the rest comes to you.
yep,
Because studiousness is a thing that is both learned, but also, don't know the word. Don't know the word. I'm bad at words. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing that comes to you, but also it's a thing that will drive you to be better. And I think a lot of young cats struggle with when they come to me, I mean, as far as my students goes, is like, okay, I'm taking lessons with you. Does that mean I'm good enough? And that's not really the case. So
yeah,
for me, it's teaching them how to fish for themselves. It's the old fish adage, of which I'm also blanking on. But it's cool.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
think the whole idea of are you good enough or not should just be out the window. You know, are you good enough or not?
you can have,
Such a limited.
yeah, you're right. You can have all the talent in the world, but like, oh, I love this story. Tom always tells this story all the time about how he cut a Blue Devil, because he shows up and he says, oh, wow, this kid is top 3 hands I've ever seen. You know, 3, where like they eventually took 11 snares. And he was a 1 first camp. He comes back the next camp. He still has his binder out. He says, okay, why are you still looking at the music? So he gets a 2. And then the next camp he comes back. He's reading the music again. So he gets cut.
Yeah,
So, like, you have all the time in the world, but nothing is ever handed to you on a silver platter. For you to kind of open the door for the undeniability you want to be in a drum line for, you're going to need to want that for yourself. And nobody's going to hand it to you.
that's right.
This is
I
dope.
think I think there was a question about a hashtag for the future shirt. Are you going to get on that?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I need to take off before I do any of this stuff. If I am no Grid Book.
I'd
You
buy
know what I
one.
mean? Like, they have changed the game because they have provided us like the documentary style resources that we need that gives the kids what they deserve. I am a nobody. Like, I have all these great places, but I have so little to prove for you because my impact is so small. It's so much larger than most people. There's still not enough for me. Like, the footprint I want to leave on this activity when all is said and done at the end of the day, I want it to be as much as I could have possibly had. Which means I can't dispense it all at once, but also I'm going to have to come up with something new every day.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe there's a day where, like, I do a For the Future t-shirt and I gauge the interest for that, but I don't know how many people would be interested in that, so I don't know how much money I would lose. You know what I mean? So, I mean, for profit, I don't know. I mean, maybe someday, I don't know.
I'd buy one. You got one customer.
I mean, like 5,000 and like give them away at Phantom Lots. So, I I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. I've never really thought about doing memorabilia. I thought about making the abstract etudes I did into a book, but
Oh,
I
that'd
would
be
need
cool.
to really fine tune that before I am ever marketing it, because there's a lot of typos. There's literally one in the world that can play that, and that's probably not going to be achieved by anybody. So there's something I just need to, look into a little bit more before I start to like market myself for the reasons, I guess. It's a good
Yeah.
question though.
If there's any of you guys who were in the last one and you had a question we didn't get to it, please put your question in here because we want to make sure that we get to it. Because there was a couple of good ones. I couldn't remember what they were, but we're trying to go down the list. So if you do have a question for Phil or for either one of us, put that in there because this is some really good stuff. Cody Kearns, Ryan needs a WVU shirt. I have some WVU shirts. I've got them all packed away at the moment.
Makes sense. My
But
brother's graduating from WV. Oh,
oh yeah, that's awesome, man.
yeah, he's smart and he works hard and he took a lot of APs. I didn't. My degree is going to be a long time coming. I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. Eventually, I am going to need to take like a back seat with this for a little bit, go back and get the music degree, or I figure it out while I'm here because Wright State's just around the corner.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
all
true.
I got to figure out, but we'll see.
What are you eventually wanting to do? Because I know you relocated to Ohio. What are some goals with that?
My goal growing up was to be exactly like Brendan or like Shaq, all these dudes that make their living off of bands. Like, I am doing what I've wanted to do. Like, I'm teaching the highest level of talent there is at Cap City and at Phantom Regiment. And those kids work really, really hard. And I'm around people that are going to help me grow, not only as like a person and as an educator, but like they're going to help me along the way and kind of like, I don't know, I guess just like as mentors, because I work really closely with James Sparling at Cap City, and he's at Phantom too. I work with Rob Ferguson, and these people, not to name drop them, but like, my goodness, they are so monumental to my growth because they are everything I've ever wanted to see a program do. And they are as organized as they need to be. And that just helps me grow because I'm around them for exactly the purpose I want to be around them for. They're going to help me grow, and they're going to be great teachers and be great friends, and they'll mentor me along the way. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing right now. Like, I teach Cap City. It's a world-class group. I shouldn't be teaching Cap City. I should be nowhere right now. I should be getting a degree, but like, there is no degree to teach marching music yet.
That's right. Just keep grinding. All right, we got one. Top three things playing prepared you for teaching. What was the top three things playing prepared you for teaching?
You are never good enough. For me,
Amen to
I
that.
have to push the envelope for my expectation for the students to be the same. Why would I put you through something I wouldn't go through myself? To break things down. Good Lord, break things down, because it's not enough to just go through something. That's not enough to say you know it, to play it down. It's not even close. To make you capitalize on the more mature and sophisticated level of any piece of literature, marching music, chamber style music, whatever you're doing, you have to break things down into the smallest chunk you need. And then once you are capable to say, oh, it's this, Then you can go, oh, it's this. And you string them together like beads on a necklace, literally. So break things down into smaller chunks. You'll understand them better. You'll understand how to compartmentalize them better. And then when you do run down the whole chart, you'll play it better than anybody else ever can.
Absolutely.
So that's I don't know. I mean, I really value pushing the envelope a lot. But also, like, well, I was going to say challenge yourself, but that's what pushing the envelope is. I guess expand your horizons as much as possible, too. Like, everybody knows me as I can play high rolls higher than everybody or something to that nature, or that you looked up to me or something, which is wild. I don't deserve that, but thank you. But I love delving into the road drumming and like getting a more historically accurate sense and finding some of the more obscure pieces of music, finding the history behind why we do what we do, and also just playing different styles of drumming. Like Ryan sent me the Swiss method, which is it's helped me teach American style drumming.
Dude, it's insane.
I take a trial from Rhythm Monster to learn Scottish drumming better because that's something that's all on forever, but like I've never understood it. So, I mean, I'm just trying to push myself and to round myself out in as many ways as possible, and that comes from never being satisfied as a student. So, I guess TLDR for those three things: push yourself, expand your horizons, and don't be satisfied with running things down only. Break things down.
Great. Jeremy Marks is here. Oh God. We got a question. The question for both of you: do you prefer teaching simpler beats that can be cleaner, or more advanced beats that progress over the course of a season? That is a good question. It's a really good question. Do you want to jump on this one first, or do you want me to do it?
I mean, I write to what I feel the music tells me to do when I do write, which is very rarely. Something I've always wanted to get into, but like my attention span for it and my knowledge of Sibelius is non-existent. So I have my little MuseScore ditties, but that's just me doing what the snare drum tells me what to do and what feels good in my own hands. As far as teaching a book, I will always choose something. If the kids' heads are here, I will always choose something here because they're gonna grow. And if you don't see it, if you don't see that they can get it right away, you have to teach them how.
Right.
That's our job. If things hit the fan for you, you can't water the thing. You gotta dig deeper and teach. So I will always choose something that's a little bit more sophisticated because it's going to help the kids grow in the end.
Yeah, I have a similar type of idea. I think number one for me is knowing my kids. Like I need to know my students first. I think that's the most important thing is, the quicker you know like your students' strengths and weaknesses, I think there's a great way to have moments that really emphasize their strengths. And then I think there's also a way to really work on their weaknesses as well to help them progress over time. It's this whole idea. You got to have if you're looking at a book over a season, you got to have short-term goals and long-term goals. There needs to be things that they understand and can know from day one, but at the same time, if they're playing the book all the way down and it's really good on day one, then 6-8 weeks later, what are you going to do? You gotta have something there that's enough something that's going to sustain them over time. But I've also had it on the flip side where I've had it and I had to water it down and things like that. I think there's a fine line that you have to play there. I think the more you know your students, the better off you're going to be. But kind of like what you said, Phil, with if they're if they're here, you always want to try to grow. You always want to try to get them a little further. I think it needs to be just far enough out of reach that's how they're always going to continue to go. Almost the carrot on the hat. You're chasing after it, kind of thing. Obviously at some point in the season you want to peak at the right time. But you need to have enough there that continues that growth, and that can be a hard thing to do if you're not used to doing it. But I think asking people who have done it more or longer than you, I think is a great way to do that. I think just get familiar with your kids, know where they're at, and then you always want them to grow, because if it's too easy, too simple, I mean, I can be as detail oriented as you want. I can make a quarter note be, I can talk about a quarter note for an hour. That's just, you we can go that way with it. But at the same time, it's all about what kind of concept are you trying to go for. Are you want to go for simpler beats but more musical, something that grows in that way, or you want to do, is there like, man, we just really are bad at this XYZ, so this year we're really going to push at this. It just depends, it depends on how you want to do it, and make a plan for that. I think if you plan whatever your goals are, I think you'll be more successful at achieving them, my opinion.
I completely agree with that.
Does anybody else have any questions? We'll wrap it up if not. Phil, this has been awesome, man. This has been really good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just happy my dad's here. I don't know if he's actually here. I see a little avatar, and I see his little tag. So
that's awesome. Shout out to Marky too.
Dude, my dad is the man. When I was marching cadets winter percussion back in the day, he literally drove me my entire rookie season because I only had a permit. We both weren't comfortable with me on the highway, especially after just like how crazy that 2015 season was constructed here. I was the youngest person in the snare line by a mile. So I was just going back home exhausted every day. So
yeah,
the fact that he kind of brought me to and from CWP comes from like being in a pinch, but I really appreciate him for that. Like, thanks for letting me like be the way I am at times. Both of you. Oh, hey Phil, mom and dad. Yeah, so thanks.
That's awesome.
You band kids gotta thank your parents more, way more than you realize in the moment.
I would not be where I am today if my dad had not wanted to drive me, and he was jacked up on Mountain Dew, driving 23 hours up to Connecticut. Like, dude,
and that's a good drink.
He didn't stop, man. He was grinding it out. All right, we got another question. Do you both prefer a book that challenges your kids or is based on the weakest kids in the line? So kind of a little twist on the last one.
I just like when the music is good, and you can always teach a player how to do that. So no matter what book you get, it's going to challenge every kid differently. Like first off, everybody's bad at quarter notes because they don't understand how feet work, but that's okay. Like, we'll get there. But there are a lot of challenges that come with learning books. Like, at first it's always chops, then it's control. We all know that. But yeah, I mean, if I had to answer that question, I have to say the book that challenges everybody equally.
I think too, like, as people who teach skill-based type things, we tend to focus, I think, a little bit too much. I don't want to blanket everybody, but I feel like we focus a little too much on skill and if we focus a little bit more of the, like the skill is important. Don't get me wrong. Like we'll play fundamentals all the time, but in the long run, it's the musical aspect, the musicality and the understanding and the depth. I think is the more you pour into that, the more the book is going to make sense to the kid as far as even if they're the weakest player. I don't. I never try to set like. I never try to want to be like. My philosophy is kind of weird and with some people. I don't try to like. I never go in front of a group and say I want to win this year. My goal is I want us to grow this year. Like if we end up getting trophies along the way, that's gravy on the taters, as I say. Like the whole idea for me, I want to beat us every day. Like, are we beating ourselves from yesterday? Did we beat ourselves from the last competition? Did we, are we growing? And I think to me that's more important, and that's because that's more tangible for my, to reach out to than some, metal or piece of plastic or something. But yeah, but going back to this, I think, if you look at it more musically, if you can get those concepts in there, then the skills are going to come with it too, as long as you keep continuing to teach the skills. So,
Right. Yeah, I agree with that completely too. I love that point. I love how everybody loves to draw comparisons to like the medals and like all that whatnot. But really, your only gauge is yourself.
yeah,
So a bunch of people, this comes up in my lessons a lot. It's like a bunch of people are just comparing themselves to like the world-class standard without realizing that they will become the world-class standard if they just practice more. If you're better than you were yesterday, you're more likely to get there. If you're better than you
yep,
were yet the day before that, you're more likely to get there now. So
yep.
that's my
How much you put into it is how much you're going to get out of it. That's really
absolute.
how it comes down to. Cool. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I won't take up any more of your time. But Phil, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been great. It's been good to chat with you.
Of course. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. Really lucky to like have a friend like you that the both of us just started out in this together, and we've just continued to grow on the way. It's great. We'll do this again.
Absolutely.
We have to do
Absolutely.
it. Fun.
Absolutely, man. I'm in. So it's good chatting with you. I'm gonna have all these videos saved too. So I'm gonna get them out. I'm gonna put them on YouTube, and we'll be able to share them for people who didn't get to watch. So you can watch it again if there was something that you missed or bad internet or something like that. But so thank you everybody for jumping in and had some great questions, good conversation. So thanks to Phil. Shout out to my man, and we'll keep going. So make sure that you guys stick around after the fact. I'm gonna be doing more of these. There's gonna be another one in 2 weeks that I'm gonna be announcing next week. It's gonna be really awesome. Make sure that you tune in for that and follow Phil. And the dude's awesome. He's got a lot of great stuff. Follow him. Ask him questions. Get in there. Take a lesson from him. Even if you just take one, it's gonna be beneficial. So, Phil, I need to sign up for a lesson. Teach me your ways, man.
Deal.
Awesome. Cool. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, man.